Today I'd like to share this part of the conversation with my Jehovah's Witness friend because it's a common tactic that they have been taught to do, and that is to walk through a fairly inaccurate, generalized look at church history in order to just kind of showcase all of the difficulties and sins and problems and wars and everything else that they can try to blame on the church, and then draw that right around to calling Christendom Babylon the Great, that believes in things like everybody going to heaven and the Trinity and hellfire. And that's exactly what she does here, though I did get a chance to correct her on some of her sharing of church history that was incorrect. And then from there, we're going to go into a discussion about the Trinity and what she thinks the Trinity is.
Well, when you look around, there's a lot of nasty things being done in the name of religion.
Oh, yeah.
For sure, like I was just reading in the paper, this is off on a tangent really, but I was reading in the Times, they've been, the Catholic Church has been showing this arm of St. Francis, this mummified arm of St. Francis.
Yeah.
And but a lot of people, of course, are like in any, there's opposite ideas, and of course there's two letters I see in this newspaper that I'm reading, and they were saying that bully for Saint Patrick, for Saint Francis, he was the one that in 15 something he started an inquisition, and there was thousands of people tried and hundreds executed and stuff like that. So
they said that was St. Francis?
Yeah, this is this hand that was they're showing now.
Yeah.
It's not the St. Francis of Assisi, it's a different St. Francis.
Okay, yeah, because I was thinking that, that sounds, the guy that started the...
Not of Assisi.
Oh, no, okay, that's what I was getting confused about, okay. The Jesuits.
The hand that's supposedly mummified.
Okay, so I thought that was, I was thinking that was Ignatius, but I can't, anyway, okay. Okay, no, I understand that. So as I said, I have a Catholic friend, and she actually, she sent me his, one of her little daily email thingies from the Catholic Church celebrating this fellow who started the Jesuits, and whenever I'm like, I'm, as a Protestant, that's not something I celebrate. Your people were killing my people, so.
No, that unfortunately, of course, was. If we look back at history, the Crusades were the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
And the Inquisition was the Protestant Church.
No, the Inquisition was Catholic.
No, I think it was the Crusades were Catholic.
Yep, they were too.
But the Inquisition, the Inquisition was the Reformation. I'm sorry.
Yes, the Reformation is the Protestant Reformation.
I got the wrong word.
Yeah, that's okay.
Reformation.
The Inquisition.
And then right down to our day, look at what's happening in Syria. They're really all religious wars, really,
Well, they are and they aren't. There's, I've heard.
I agree with you. They are and they aren't, and that's a good comment you made, because you know what? In Revelation, when you look at the symbolism there, and there's a harlot riding a wild beast.
Yeah.
And that harlot is full of spiritism.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And she's riding the wild beast that has 7 heads and 10 horns. And those horns, those heads have crowns. Well, that's a picture. That it said it's Babylon the Great. It's identified. And what is Babylon the Great? But all Christendom's religions, because that's where Christendom's religions have started from. As we just mentioned, most of them think of hellfire. They speak of going to heaven. They speak of God as a Trinity or a dual God. And the only religions all have those same qualities.
Okay. There's a lot to talk about there. Let's just, I should probably go in a bit, but let's talk a little bit about the Trinity and what your understanding of what the belief of the Trinity is, if you don't mind. Can you tell me what your understanding is of the Trinity? I know you don't agree with it, but can you tell me what the doctrine is?
Well, the word Trinity is not in the Bible, ever.
Correct.
And, of course, it wasn't always, in any religion, it wasn't no established fact till about the 3rd and 4th century. At first it was it was considered as two gods, and then it was just a moment here. Then it was debated, and it was decided that Rome decided that in order to unite the different religions in their new countries that they took over when Rome became an empire, then they formed what they called the Council of Nicaea. And at that, the emperor decided that God was three gods in one. And that became the official doctrine of the Catholic Church.
See if you can note the many discrepancies that she mentions here as she just tries to describe the history of the Trinity. She's just actually sharing exactly what the Watchtower has taught her, but it is contrary to church history. First of all, this whole idea that there were two gods actually was Arius's idea, which he brought in and was never believed before he came along. She also talks about it as if Rome decided, like as if there was a Roman Catholic Church in charge then, which was not the case at all, that they decided to bring about this council and basically create the doctrine of the Trinity. Again, that is completely false. One of the primary purposes of the Council of Nicaea was to deal with Arius and have a formal statement. And yes, absolutely, Constantine didn't want to have division in his empire, so he called them together to sort it out and come to a conclusion, come to a consensus. And he wasn't enforcing anything. He didn't particularly care either way. And in fact, he himself became an Arian towards the end of his life. So what happened was that the creeds were brought about by these councils in order to deal with the false teaching that was being brought in. Of course, that is not something that the Watchtower will teach its people, and in fact, they're even discouraged from reading the Nicene Creed or the Athanasian Creed or the Apostles' Creed because, that's all part of evil Christendom, and that might, pollute you or something like that. So because they're not really allowed to read that, they don't know. They're actually just going with what they've been told, and they're not even able to open up a history book and see what really happened.
Okay, so you believe that the doctrine of the Trinity is that God is three gods. Is that what you're saying?
No, some consider the Trinity three gods, and there's some things two gods, but they're one. That's because that has to agree with the Bible or with what they say. So it's three gods in one or two gods in one. That supposedly is the Trinity.
Okay. And how did you find that out, that that's what the Trinity is?
In talking to Catholics and different people who believe in the Trinity.
Okay.
I just want to make a quick note at this point as well that when I'm beginning to tell her that her definition of the Trinity isn't the Trinity, she's just claiming that's what she's heard from people that she's talked to out on the street and whatnot. She's actually just really describing what the Watchtower teaches her. You can look it up on their website in their own literature, and that is what they say. It's possible she has run into some people who have confusion about these things because, sadly, the doctrine of the Trinity is not really taught as clearly as it should be in many churches. So that does not help the situation, to be sure, but what I believe is that she was using a tactic here of just saying, well, this is what I've been told by people that I've met. It's an experience claim, so that you can't just directly contradict it with the truth because it's just her subjective experience. And that's a very common ploy that you'll find witnesses will use in order to keep you from actually really refuting it.
And most of them do. Most people equate Jesus to the same divine being as God, Jehovah God.
Okay.
And that's why actually a lot of people will think that we don't believe in Christ Jesus because we don't just think of him as God, equal to Jehovah.
Right. Okay. If you're interested, that's actually not the doctrine of the Trinity pretty much at all. It's definitely not the historic.
Well, I don't know if that's the Trinity. That's what people tell me.
Okay. I have actually had the real pleasure of studying a bit about the doctrine of the Trinity. If you're curious, if you want to know just like what we were talking about.
What is your idea of it?
Okay. So the Trinity, and this is one you might want to remember if you're wanting to, discuss with people when you're going door to door and that sort of thing to make sure, because this is accurate. And I know a lot of people, this is a failing in the church today that it's not talked about very often, so a lot of people don't really know how to define the Trinity very well. It's ignorance. It's not that they've been taught incorrectly. They just haven't been taught very much at all, if at all. But the Trinity in the most simplistic form to explain is God is one being consisting of three co-equal, co-eternal persons. And those are very specific words.
Yeah, that's what I think I just said.
No, not at all, because three persons does not equate to three separate gods. God is one God. The Bible is very clear on that. The Bible also clearly calls...
But how can three individuals be one? So then that doesn't make sense, does it?
Okay, well, and this is where we need to look at the definitions of the term being versus the term persons. So,
isn't a being a person?
Well,
what is a being?
Persons are beings, certainly. I am a being, we're human beings. I'm a human being, you're a human being. We are also persons. Now, my cat is also a being, but she is not a person, right? So there's different. They don't mean being and person they have some similarities in with the way we think of those words, but they're not the same thing.
But that being is still an individual. It's not part of something else.
That's actually
you're saying.
That's actually because
people are part of one thing.
Right, because you are when you read the Bible, you assume a Unitarian perspective, whereas I see a Trinitarian perspective there. So I see God the Father, God the Son, and God the Spirit being referred to all as deity, and there's only one God, right?
Then why, when Jesus, in all the Gospels that he spoke of, that are spoken of him, he referred to his Father as greater than he is.
Yeah, let's go to that passage. You remember where that is?
Well, it's in lots of passages. It's in most of the passages, but particularly in John. He always talks about the Father was greater than him, and he doesn't do anything.
No, I think yeah, but he doesn't. That's the thing. He doesn't constantly say that. He says that. He does say it, but yeah, I'm just trying to think. Where is that? What verse that is? I'm just trying to think. Sorry, I'm just hunting around here too.
Like take for instance, if you're looking in John, take chapter 17 and verse 26, say for instance.
Okay, I'll just turn there. Sorry, John
17.
Yeah.
And read 21 and then 26, or 26 and 21, whichever way you want to do it.
Okay, just one second. John 21? John 17:21?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so We'll start at 20 because that's where the sentence starts. Okay. I do not ask for these only, but also for those who will believe in me through their word, that they may all be one, just as you, Father, are in me, and I in you, that they also may be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me.
Okay. So there it talks about Jesus and God being in union, but also that he's talking about the apostles, that him being in union, and all together. So there's a union there between the apostles and Jesus and God.
Right.
And then, yet you're saying that that verse when Jesus said that he was in union with God, that means that they were one. Well, then how could the apostles be one with him?
Yeah, and that's not a verse I would use specifically to say that anyway. So because he's talking about,
that's what it says there.
But he's talking about unity with the unity that he has with the Father. He wants to have a unity with his children as well.
Yeah, they should all speak as one.
Right. No, but that wasn't actually the verse. Sorry, I'm trying to think of it. I was just reading it the other day.
Doesn't that back up also the idea that? And if you read 17 and verse, and then back up and read in the same chapter, read verse 8.
Chapter 17, verse 8?
Uh-huh.
For I have given them words that you gave me, and they have received them, and have come to know in truth that I came from you, and they have believed that you sent me.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. That doesn't really speak to the doctrine itself.
Yeah, so he came, Jesus said he came from God, but where was God? God was up in heaven and Jesus was on earth.
Yes, but he came from heaven as well.
Pardon?
But Jesus came from heaven.
Yeah. But so God was still in heaven. God wasn't on earth with Jesus.
Right.
If they were one.
Right. They're in unity. We agree on that.
But Jesus came to earth, not God.
Jesus came to earth. The Father didn't come to earth.
No. So they were separate.
They're two persons.
Yeah, so they're not one person.
Right. I'm not saying they're one person, and that's really important. People that say that he's one person, that's a heresy called modalism. That's not what I believe.
So if they were the same, then read chapter 14 and verse 28.
Yes, that's the one I was looking for. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, that's a really interesting passage there. So, yeah, can you read it in yours? Do you have that open?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You heard that I said, pardon me, you heard I said to you, I am going away and I am coming back to you. If you loved me, you would rejoice that I am going to the Father, for the Father is greater than I am.
Right, and so what is the context of why he's saying that they should rejoice?
Because he was going back to heaven.
Right, and so why would they be sad about that?
Why would they be sad?
Mm-hmm.
Because he was dying and he wouldn't be there with them.
Yeah, so that's the thing. And
they didn't know at that time that he would pour Holy Spirit and then they would be chosen to go to heaven with him. Yeah, but what would be comforting to them about him saying that the Father is greater than him? Is it possible that means it's a positional thing, that the Father is in heaven? I'm going to be in heaven. I'm going to be with my Father. I'm going to be in perfection. I'm not going to be in this, being tortured in this fallen world anymore. Of course they knew that. Okay. They knew that, and angelic creatures are better, are more powerful and everything. They knew they knew the history of, they were Israelites. They knew that the history that an angel came down and overnight, without a noise, killed 185,000 soldiers.
Right. So my point being, where he says there, the Father is greater than I, and that's why they should rejoice. Well, they already would have understood who the Father is and how great he is. So my point being
that's true, but already by the time Jesus was on the earth, don't forget that that Jewish religion was already very badly contaminated from 607, when the Jews were taken into captivity to Babylon.
I honestly can't remember if I let that little comment go because I didn't want to get sidetracked into another discussion at the time, or if I just really didn't realize at that point quite yet how important it is to discuss the issue of 607 BC. That is when the Watchtower teaches that Jerusalem fell, but archaeology and all of historical recordings say that it was 587, 586, not 607. And what's key with that is that 607 is a kind of a core date that everything else is based on. So if you realize that it didn't happen then, 1914 doesn't fit anymore either. This all came about because of Charles Taze Russell's obsession with pyramids and numerology, and so he came up with this date 607, but there is nothing to back it up, and there's quite a bit to back up that it's not true. So unfortunately, I didn't address that, but I wanted to make a point of it now just because I want people to be aware that look into this, study a little bit more about what the Watchtower teaches about 607 and why it's completely ridiculous, and why it's so foundational. They will try to downplay it, but it really is extremely important to their doctrine, and if you kind of pull at that thread, it really all unravels. So keep that in mind when you're talking with them.
Because that's why there was this division between the scribes and the Pharisees. The Pharisees didn't believe in the resurrection.
The Sadducees.
The Sadducees,
yeah. Okay. My point being, though, where you look at where he says the Father is greater than I, the context of that purpose of saying that is not the Father is more of a God than I. It's saying that the Father is in heaven. He's in a greater place, right?
It's not saying that at all. No, there's no, it just says the Father is greater than I.
Right.
Well, you're reading that into there, my dear.
Well, that's the only way it would be any comfort to them. That's why I'm seeing it that way.
Oh, no, not necessarily, because as I just said, they knew, and they had Ezekiel's scrolls. They had Isaiah's scrolls. They knew that heavenly creatures were created by God in Christ Jesus that were more powerful than human beings, and they had Ezekiel's prophecy about this beautiful throne in heaven with all these precious stones. Mm-hmm. They would know that it would have nothing to do, there would be nothing on earth in comparison to heaven. Right,
so that's exactly why they would be comforted by it.
They would be comforted. They didn't need any other explanation. They already had, as I say, those...
Right, exactly. They didn't need an explanation. He was reminding them of what was already the case.
So he was going to the position he had before.
Mm-hmm.
If you've been following along with this series, you've probably noticed a number of times when I have not called this lady out on some of her claims and have not taken the opportunity to correct some things or to get more into solid doctrine with her. At the end of this conversation there, I think you probably noticed that, first of all, she was making it very difficult for me to get my point out. She would interrupt and jump in and not let me even gather my thoughts to continue with a sentence. And then she also kind of deflected to the Sadducees for a little bit there. I'm not quite sure if that was just another attempt to try and get me off my game, so to speak. But she's definitely a master at doing that. And again, I'm not sure if that is part of the training, which it might well be, or it might be just that's how her brain works and she's just busy thinking about all the different things she wants to add in. But these are the sorts of things that happen when you're talking to Jehovah's Witnesses. So it's just good to be aware of. You can see where maybe I'm not handling it as well as I should have in places. But what I wanted to do was just share these things so that Christians are aware of it, and you can know that even if you don't feel like you're qualified, you can still do it. If I can do it, you can do it too.